Loaded?
Yes, sir.
Well, then I'll pay for it.
Hey, you!
Hands up. Turn around.
Are you telling me that my breakthrough
I want him back. Humans and bots.
Yeah?
Incoming!
Stuck on it!
Get ready.
I am going to save my brother.
In a broken future where the machines once served and now haunt what's left of the world, one journey could change everything. Welcome back to I'm Sanima Reviews. Today we dive into the Electric State 2025, a haunting adventure through abandoned lands, lost technology, and a truth buried beneath the silence. Stay with me because this is not just a journey, it is a discovery of what humanity left behind. The Electric State is a 2025 science fiction adventure film directed by the visionary duo Anthony Russo and Joy Russo. The screenplay, written by Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFly, is inspired by the illustrated novel by Simon Stollenhag. The film features a star-studded cast led by Millie Bobby Brown and Chris Pratt alongside Ke Huy Quan in a dual role, with supporting performances from Woody Harrelson, Anthony Mackie, Giancarlo Esposito, and Stanley Tucci. The project was first announced in 2017, originally with Andy Muschietti attached. However, the Russo brothers officially took over directing duties in 2020 after an initial deal with the Universal Pictures. Distribution rights eventually moved to the Netflix in 2022. Filming took place in Atlanta, Georgia, and with a massive budget of around $320 million. The film ranked among the most expensive ever produced. The movie premiered at the Grauman's Egyptian Theatre on February 24, 2025, before its global release on Netflix on March 14. Despite its huge scale and high expectations, the film received largely negative reviews from critics. In an alternate 1990s, the world is broken after a devastating war between humans and robots. Human only won because of one invention, a powerful technology that lets people upload their minds into machines. Sounds amazing, right? But there's a dark side. Most people have stopped living in their real world, choosing instead to exist in a fake virtual life. Amid this chaos, we meet Michael, a teenage girl who refuses to escape reality. She's lost her family in a tragic accident, or at least that's what she believes. One day, everything changes when a strange robot named Cosmo appears. It does not speak like normal machine, but somehow it convinces Michael of something impossible. Her little brother might still be alive, with nothing left to lose. Michelle sets off a dangerous journey across a ruined America. Along the way, she teams up with a mysterious drifter and a shape shifting robot, slowly uncovering a shocking truth behind the war and the technology that saved humanity. What she discovered is terrifying. Her brother's mind was not lost, it was used, exploited to power the very system controlling the world. Now Michelle faces the impossible choice: save her brother or destroy the system keeping humanity alive. In the end, the truth comes at a heavy cost. Some lives cannot be saved, but their sacrifice can change everything. And as the world begins to wake up from its artificial dream, one question remains: was technology ever meant to save us or control us? The Electrical State 2025, a complete guide to cast, characters, and the star studded ensemble behind Netflix's most ambitious film. In introduction of a $320 million gamble on an all star lineup. When Netflix greenlit The Electric State, a science fiction action adventure film directed by Anthony and Joy Russo, it was not merely placing a bet on a beloved illustrated novel by a Swedish artist, Simon Stålenhag. It was assembling one of the most expensive and star-laden cast in the history of streaming cinema, with a reported budget of $320 million, making it one of the most expensive films ever produced. The film needed a roster of performers capable of carrying an epic retro futuristic story that blended coming of age drama with robot rebellion, cooperative villainy, and dystopian road trip adventure. Released on Netflix on March 14, 2025, following a world premiere at Grauman's Egyptian Theatre in Los Angeles on February 24, 2025. The Electric State brought together an extraordinary ensemble of actors who gave voice, both literally and figuratively, to one of the most ambitious projects in the recent streaming history. This video is a deep and comprehensive look at every major cast member of the Electric State 2025, who they are, what roles they play, how they came to be the part of film, and what their performances mean within the larger tapestry of this expensive, controversial, and ultimately widely watched production. From Millie Bobby Brown's lead role as an orphan teenager to Woody Harrelson voicing a mascot tuned robot revolutionary, the film's casting is a story in itself, one filled with last minute replacement, Oscar winning comebacks, Marvel reunions, and a collection of voice performances that transformed animated robots into fully realized characters. The source material: Simon Stålenhag's vision before exploring the cast. It's important to understand the world they were asked to inhabit. The Electric State is a loosely based on Simon Stålenhag's 2018 illustrated novel of the same name. Stålenhag, a Swedish concept artist, is celebrated for his melancholic painterly images of retro-futuristic America where decaying technology and human longing coexist in haunting harmony. His original book is described as elliptical in narrative, muted in color palette, and melancholy in mood. A deeply personal, quiet, almost meditative work. The Russo brothers, Anthony and Joy, acquired the rights to the novel back in December 2017, initially with director Andy Muschietti. It, it Chapter 2, in negotiation to helm the project. However, by December 2020, the Russo themselves stepped in as directors, bringing along their frequent collaborators, screenwriters Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFly, to craft a screenplay that would ultimately diverge significantly from Stollenhag's source material. The Russos acknowledged they found the original novel's prose narrative difficult to expand into two-hour film and chose instead to use Stollenhak's stunning artwork as an aesthetic springboard for an entirely new story. On set in an alternate 1994 America where robot wars, neurocaster technology, and a young girl's search for her lost brother would drive the plot. This creative directions, ambitious, star-powered, and boldly different from the source, required a cast that could match its scale. Millie Bobby Brown as Michelle Green, the heart of film. At the center of the electric state stands Millie Bobby Brown, one of the most recognizable young actresses in the world. Most in Marbella, Spain, Born in Marbella, Spain on February 19, 2004, Brown first captured global attention as 11 in Netflix's Stranger Things, where she delivered a stunning, largely wordless performance that made her a household name overnight. Her screen presence, simultaneously vulnerable and fiercely determined, became her calling card. In Electric State, Brown plays Michelle Green, an orphan teenager living in foster care in an alternate 1994. Michelle lost her parents and her younger brother, Christopher, in a car crash, or so she was told. Her world is bleak and discontinued. She refuses to participate in virtual classes through Neurocaster technology, a device that allows users to upload their consciousness into drone robots, placing her at odds with a society increasingly choosing virtual escapism over physical reality. When a sentient robot named Cosmo, modeled after a cartoon character her brother loved, shows up at her door and leads her to believe Christopher is still alive, Michelle sets off on a cross country journey through a dystopian American landscape to find him. Brown had been attached to this project since December 2022. When Universal Pictures first acquired the distribution rights, she was among the very first pieces of talent confirmed for the film, long before the Russo officially took over the directing duties. Her transition from the Stranger Things universe to this new science fiction world was viewed as a major step in her evolution as a leading actress in blockbuster cinema. The character of Michelle is demanding; she must carry the emotional weight of the entire film, navigating grief, hope, determination, and ultimately a devastating sacrifice, while also maintaining the physical demands of an action adventure story. Critics were divided on Brown's performance. Some felt that she was the film's strongest human element, while others, particularly in major publications, argued that her performance lacked the depth the role required, with some noting that her big screen work yet to find the emotional nuance she displayed in Stranger Things. Regardless of the critical reception, her star power was indisputable. The Electric State debuted at number 1 on Netflix's English language film chart, accumulating 25.2 million views in its first week, a testament in large part to the audience's investment in Brown. Brown's journey as Michelle culminates in one of the film's most emotionally charged moments, the decision to disconnect her brother's consciousness from the neurocaster system, knowing it will result in his physical death, but free him from an existence of exploitation. It is a scene that asks everything of its lead actress, requiring her to convey the full spectrum of love, loss, and moral clarity. Chris Pratt as John D. Keats, the roguish drifter. If Millie Bobby Brown is the emotional core of Electric State, then Chris Pratt is its roguish, wisecracking engine. Pratt, born on June 21, 1979 in Virginia, Minnesota, is one of the Hollywood's most bankable stars, a performer who transformed himself from lovable goof Andy Dwyer in Parks and Recreation into global action star through his roles as Peter Quill, Star-Lord in the Guardians of Galaxy franchise, and Owen Grady in the Jurassic World series. In the Electric State, Pratt plays John D. Keats, a former robot war soldier turned drifter and smuggler who makes a precarious living scavenging goods from the exclusion zone, the forbidden territory where the banished robots now reside. Keats is brash, funny, and morally flexible, a man who has survived the aftermath of a devastating war by keeping his head down and his expectations low. When he reluctantly teams up with Michelle, he becomes the film's surrogate father figure and comic relief, embarking on a road trip that gradually strips away his cynicism and forces him to recommit to something larger than himself. Pratt casting was confirmed in August 2022, following initial reports in June of that year that he was in talks to star. His involvement was seen as the film's second major anchor alongside Brown, and their dynamic, young idealist meet weathered opportunist, is one of the film's central relationships. The Russo brothers were no strangers to Pratt. He had starred in both Avengers Infinity War 2018 and Avengers Endgame 2019 under their direction, and there was a clear shorthand between director and actor that carried into the Electric State. Pratt's performance in the film is largely what audiences and certain critics expected: physically assured, comedically timed, and emotionally accessible, though some reviewers felt that his work, like Brown's, failed to transcend the material. Regardless, Keats is a character designed to evolve from reluctant participant to committed hero. The Pratt brings his characteristic blend of charm and physicality to the role. He was nominated for Favorite Movie Actor at the Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Award in June 2025 for this performance, a recognition of his continued appeal with younger audience. Ki Hui Kwan as Dr. Clark Amherst and PC, a dual performance of quiet complexity. Perhaps the most intriguing cast in the Electric State is that of Kei Hui Kwan, who plays not one but two roles in the film: Dr. Clark Amherst, a human scientist, and a PC, a robot built by Dr. Amherst, who carries his voice. Born on August 20, 1971 in Saigon, now Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, Kei Hui Kwan had one of the Hollywood's most remarkable comeback stories. A star child in 1980s, known for his roles as Short Round in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom 1984 and Data in Goonies 1985. Kwan largely stepped away from acting due to the difficulty of finding meaningful roles as an adult Asian American actor. His extraordinary return in Everything Everywhere All at Once 2022 earned him the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor and reintroducing him to an entirely new generation of filmgoers. It was actually Kwan's Oscar winning co star Michelle Yeoh who was originally cast in Electric State. Yeoh had been confirmed in the August 2022 casting announcement, but she had later had to withdraw due to scheduling conflicts. Kwan, her Everything Everywhere co star, stepped in to take her place, a fitting and somewhat poetic replacement that kept the spirit of that celebrated collaboration alive. As Dr. Amherst, Kwan played the morally conflicted scientist who worked for the Senator Corporation and discovered that Michelle's brother Christopher believed that had in fact been placed in a vegetative state and had his extraordinary intellect exploited to develop the neurocaster technology. Amherst, consumed by guilt, fled to the exclusion zone and built PC, a robot companion who carries his voice, as a part of his effort to eventually free Christopher. The dual role allows Kwan to demonstrate remarkable range. Amherst is haunted, remorseful, and physically fragile, while PC takes on the emotional and expressive energy of a character who processes human concepts through mechanical form. Kwan's casting brought enormous goodwill and critical interest to the project. His presence guaranteed that the Electric State would be taken seriously as work of ensemble filmmaking, and his quiet, layered performance was among the most praised in the film. Jason Alexander as Ted Finister, the deadbeat foster father. Jason Alexander, best known to the world as the perpetually scheming, hapless George Costanza on Seinfeld Flood 1989 to 1998, brings considerable comedic and dramatic weight to the role of Ted Finister. Michelle's deadbeat foster father. Born J. Scott Greenspan on September 23, 1959, in New Jersey, Newark, New Jersey, Alexander had built a career on his remarkable ability to make deeply flawed characters both infuriating and strangely sympathetic. Ted Finister is exactly the kind of character, a man who operates a drone called Wingman through neurocaster technology, living vicaciously through virtual existence while failing his foster daughter in every possible way. He is neglectful, self absorbed, and emblematic of the film's broader critique of a society that has chosen to retreat from physical reality into digital escapism. Alexandra's early scenes establish the emotional stakes of Michelle's journey. She is not simply searching for a lost brother, but escaping of a life of profound neglect and emotional abandonment. His performance grounds the film's most fantastical element in a recognizable, painfully human reality. Alexander was part of the August 2022 casting wave, announced alongside Stanley Tucci, Brian Cox, and Jenny Slate. His inclusion signaled the film's commitment to filling every secondary role with performers of exceptional caliber. Giancarlo Esposito as Marshall Bradbury, the soldier with concise. Giancarlo Esposito brings his own now legendary screen nuance to the role of Marshall Bradbury, a soldier infamously nicknamed the Butcher of Scantedy. Esposito, born on April 26, 1958, in Copenhagen, Denmark, to an Italian father and African American mother, has become one of the most compelling, villainous and morally ambiguous presence in the contemporary film and television, most famously as Gustavo Fring in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul as Moff Gideon in The Mandalorian. In Electric State, Bradbury began as an enforcer for the Senator Corporation, carrying out the orders of CEO Ethan Skate with cold efficiency. However, the character undergoes a significant moral arc with the film. Disgusted by Stake's exploitation of Christopher and the devastation brought by Senator Corporator greed, Bradbury ultimately defects and assists the robot leader Peanut in confronting Stake. It is the turn that plays beautifully against Esposito's established screen image. Audiences conditioned to expect wavering demands from him are surprised when Bradbury's conscience reasserts itself. Esposito was cast in November 2022, originally announced as voicing a menacing robot drone named Marshall, details that were later refined as the film's production evolved. His involvement added a layer of genuine dramatic gravity to the film's antagonist side of ledger. Stanley Tucci as Ethan Stake, the corporate villain. Stanley Tucci plays Ethan Skate, the CEO of Senator Corporation and the film's primarily human antagonist. Born on November 11, 1960 in Peekskill, New York, Tucci is one of the most versatile and distinguished character actor working in Hollywood. Equally comfortable in comedy, Big Night, The Devil Wears Prada in drama, The Lovely Bones, Conclave in supporting roles and as a lead. As Ethan Stake, Tucci embodies a particular kind of 21st century villainy, the visionary entrepreneur who genuinely believes his exploitation of others is justified by the greater good he is delivering to the world. Skate developed the Neurocaster technology, which allowed humans to upload their consciousness into drone robots and used it to turn the tide in humanity's war against robots. The fact that this technology was built on the exploited consciousness of Komato's child is to Skate a necessary sacrifice for advancement of civilization. Tucci brings his characteristic blend of refinement and cold intelligence to the role. Skate is not crackling megalomaniac but a man of complete moral compartmentalization, someone who has thoroughly conceived himself of his own righteous that genuine cruelty become merely efficient management. It is a performance that rewards close attention and Tucci's instinct for finding humanity or its calculated performance in even the most compromised characters served the film well. He was confirmed as a part of the cast in August 2022. Woody Norman as Christopher, the brother at all the center of it all. Woody Norman, the young British actor born in 2009, plays Christopher, Michelle's younger brother, the figure whose absence drives the entire narrative. Norman first gained widespread attention for his remarkable performance opposite Joaquin Phoenix in Mike Mills' Come On 2021, a black and white film in which he played a cautious, emotionally perspective child navigating complex family dynamics. His work in the film was considered one of the finest child performances in recent memory. In The Electric State, Christopher is a child prodigy whose consciousness has been effectively stolen by a senator and integrated into the Neurocaster system, powering the corporation's drone technology. For much of the film, Christopher exists only as a presence, glimpsed through Cosmos communications and finally encountered by Michelle in the virtual realm where his consciousness is trapped. The role demands that Norman convey both Christopher's intellectual brilliance and his profound suffering. A child who has been exploited beyond any reasonable comprehension and who, when finally given the chance to speak to his sister, expresses not anger but a weary, heartbreaking desire for release. It is a performance of considerable emotional depth, and Norman's casting, confirmed in October 2022, was seen as a cope for production. Anthony Mackie as Herman, the robot partner. Anthony Mackie lends his voice to Herman, a sentient robot who serves as Keith's partner in crime and companion. Mackie, born on September 23, 1978, in New Orleans, Louisiana, is best known for its portrayal of Sam Wilson Falcon and later Captain America in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, having appeared in the role across numerous films and the Disney Plus series The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Herman is one of the film's most important robot characters, a shape-shifting, voice-cracking mechanical being who is capable of taking on multiple forms and who serves as both comic foil and genuine friend to kids. The Russo brothers have described the dynamic between Keats and Herman as central to the film's comedic heartbeat, a breaking, genuinely affectionate partnership that recalls classic odd couple dynamics in road movie tradition. Mackey's natural charisma and warmth translate beautifully into voice performance. Herman is not merely a comic sidekick but a fully realized character with his own perspective on the war between human and robots, his own history of survival, and his own complicated feelings about loyalty and freedom. Mackey's voice brings energy, humor, and unexpected tenderness to the character. Like Pratt, Mackey's relationship with the Russo brothers predates the Electric State. His extensive work in the MCU under their direction created the kind of trust and creative shorthand that carries into every collaboration. He was confirmed as a part of cast in November 2022. Woody Harrelson as Mr. Peanut, the robot revolutionary. One of the film's most inspired piece of casting is Woody Harrelson as Mr. Peanut, a robot variant of the famous planter mascot who has become unlikely leader of the robot dwelling in the exclusion zone. Harrelson, born on July 23, 1961 in Midland, Texas, is one of the Hollywood's most distinctive and unpredictable performers. From his breakout as the naive Woody Boyd on Cheers 1985 to 1993 to acclaimed dramatic work in Natural Born Killers, The People vs. Larry Flint, No Country for Old Men, Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, and his Emmy-winning role in True Detective, Harrelson has consistently defined categorization. As Mr. Peanut, Harrelson brings his trademark gravel voiced, philosophically inflected charisma to the character that is simultaneously absurd and oddly dignified. Mr. Peanut presides over the exclusion zone, a heaven for banished robots of all kinds, with a mixture of worldly weary wisdom and a genuine revolutionary conviction. He is the film's most overtly political character, representing the robot desire not merely for survival but for genuine equality and recognition of their sentient status. The choice of Mr. Peanut as a robot character is one of the film's most playfully subversive ideas. Planter's mascot, a top hat wearing, monocle sporting anthropomorphic peanut, is transformed here from a cheerful corporate mascot into a symbol of robotic resistance, a being who had outlived his commercial purpose and found something far more meaningful in the struggle for his people's freedom. Harrelson's voice gives Mr. Peanut unexpected gravities, turning what could have been pure comedic novelty into something genuinely compelling. Harrelson was confirmed as a part of the cast in October 2024, notably later than most of the other principal cast member, along with Alan Tudyk, Hank Azaria, and Coleman Domingo, suggestions that the voice cast for the film's robot community was assembled during latter phase of post-production. Alan Tudyk as Cosmo, the robot companion. Alan Tudyk voices Cosmo, the sentient robot modeled after the cartoon character that Michelle's brother Christopher loved as a child. Cosmo is arguably the film's most emotionally resonant character robot. He can communicate only through the gestures and a limited set of pre-recorded words, yet manages to convey the extraordinary warmth and devotion. He is the character through whom Christopher reaches out to his sister, and it is Cosmo's arrival at Michelle's door that sets the entire story in motion. Tudyk, born on March 16, 1971 in El Paso, Texas, is one of the most beloved character actors and voice performers in Hollywood. He is perhaps best known to genre audiences for his role as Wash in Whedon's Firefly and Serenity, but has built an extraordinary parallel career as a voice actor, including characters in Disney animated films such as Frozen, Wreck-It, Ralph, Moana, and Zootopia. His ability to convey deep emotion through the voice alone, often with minimal dialogue, makes him ideal for a character like Cosmo. The challenge of voicing Cosmo is immense because the robot cannot speak freely. Tudyk must convey Christopher's love, longing, urgency, and intelligence through an extremely constrained vocal palette. His performance reportedly required him to work extensively with the film's animation and performance capture teams to ensure that Cosmo's physical gesture aligned perfectly with the emotional undertones his voice would carry. Tudyk was confirmed in October 2024. Jenny Slate as Paniple, the mail carrier robot. Jenny Slate voiced Paniple, a mail carrier robot who lives in exclusion zone. Slate, born on March 25, 1982, in Milton, Massachusetts, Tess, a comedian, actress, and writer, known for her work on Saturday Night Live, her stand up specials, and beloved performances in films like Obvious Child 2014 and Marcel the Shell with Shoes On 2021. She has also built a substantial voice acting career, notably as Dawn Bellwether in Disney's Zootopia. Pennypal is one of the exclusion zone's more endearing residents, a robot who once served the mundane human scale function of delivering mail and who has found community among the other banished mechanical beings. Slade's warmth, wit, and distinctive vocal energy brings the character to life with characteristic playfulness. Slate was part of original August 2022 casting announcement, suggesting she was among the earliest voice cast members confirmed for project. Brian Cox as Popfly, the baseball robot. Brian Cox, the legendary Scottish actor born on June 1, 1946, in Dundee, Scotland, lends his magisterial voice to Popfly, a baseball themed robot inhabiting the exclusion zone. Cox is perhaps best known to contemporary audiences for his starring performance as Logan Roy in HBO's Succession, a role that earned him numerous awards and cemented his status as one of the greatest character actors of his generation. His career spanned decades and included landmark roles Braveheart, X2, X-Men United, Manhunter as the original Hannibal Lecter, and adaptation. The choice of Cox for Popfly is one of the film's most delightful pieces of casting. There is something inherently comic about the voice of the formidable Logan Roy emerging from a baseball-themed robot. Cox brings a regal gravity to exclusion zone communities that elevate Popfly beyond novelty. Cox was confirmed as a part of the cast in August 2022 announcement, with initial reports noting he would be voicing a character in the film, Hank Azaria, as Perplexo. The Magician Robot. Hank Azaria voices Perplexo, a magician themed robot living in the exclusion zone. Azaria, born on April 25, 1964, in Forest Hills, New York, is one of the most celebrated voice actors in television history, having spent decades on The Simpsons, providing voices for dozens of recurring characters including Apu, Moish Zeslak, Chief Wiggum, Professor Frink, and many others. His range as a voice performer is extraordinary, and his ability to conjure fully realized personalities from a single voice makes him ideally suited for the film's robot ensemble. Perplexo is one of the exclusion zone's most theatrical residents, a robot who once performed magic for human audience and who now maintains his illusionist persona within the robot community. Azaria's comedic instinct and gift for character voice makes this a natural and inspired piece of casting. Like Harrelson and Tudyk, Azaria was confirmed in October 2024. Coleman Domingo as Wolfie. The drone customer. Coleman Domingo voices Wolfie, a drone customer of Keats, whose human operator is never shown on screen. Domingo, born on November 5, 1969, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, is one of the most acclaimed actors currently working in Hollywood. He earned Academy Award nominations for Rustin 2023 and Sing Sing 2024 and is widely regarded as one of the finest performers of his generation, also known for his work in Fear the Walking Dead and Zola. Wolfie's role in film is relatively contained, but Domingo's vocal presence ensures the character registers as a fully realized presence despite the absence of on-screen human counterpart. The performance is a reminder of how performer of Domingo's caliber can make even a supporting voice role feel essential. Domingo was confirmed in October 2024. Holly Hunter as Madeline Vance. Holly Hunter appears in the film as Madeline Vance Hunter, born on March 20, 1958, in Conyers, Georgia, is one of the most distinguished actresses in American cinema, an Academy Award winner for The Piano 1993, and nominees for numerous other films including Broadcast News, The Firm, and 13. Her presence in the Electric State, even in supporting capacity, adds considerable prestige to ensemble. Patty Harrison as Ligotti. Patty Harrison plays Ligotti in the film. Harrison in 1991. She is comedian and actress who has built a devoted following through her work on social media. I think you should live with the Tim Robinson and her acclaimed performance in Together 2021. Her casting brings a distinctly contemporary comedic sensibility to the ensemble. Marin Hinkle as Miss Sablinski. Marin Hinkle plays Miss Sablinski, Michelle's school counselor. Hinkle, born on March 23, 1966, in Dar es Salaam, Tanzia is best known for her work on Two and a Half Men and The Marvelous Miss Maisel, where she played Rose Wiseman. As Miss Sablinski, she represents the institutional world that Michelle is trying to escape, a figure of nominal authority operating within a system that has failed to protect its children. Michael Trucco as Ben Abbott. Michael Trucco plays Ben Abbott in the film Trucco, born on June 22, 1970, in Whittier, California, is best known for his role as Samuel Anders in Battlestar Galactica 2004 to 2009. His inclusion in the Electric State connects the film to a tradition of thoughtful science fiction that takes seriously the question of what it means to be human in age of machines. Rob Gronkowski as Blitz, the football robot, former NFL star Rob Gronkowski voices Blitz, a football-themed robot living in the exclusion zone, born on May 14, 1989, in Amherst, New York. Gronkowski is widely regarded as one of the greatest tight ends in FL history, having won three Super Bowls with the New England Patriots and one with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. His transition into entertainment has been cheerfully self aware and blitz. A robot whose entire identity is built around football is a perfectly calibrated piece of celebrity casting that plays on Gronkowski's real world persona. Jordan Black as Clem, the hamburger robot. Jordan Black voices Clem, a hamburger themed robot in the exclusion zone who once sold food and still offers whatever provisions he has left. Black, born on September 2022 in 1971 in Los Angeles, California, is a versatile character actor and comedian with appearances in numerous films and television projects. Clem is one of the most poignant members of the exclusion zone community, a robot whose entire purpose was feeding people, now trying to maintain that function in a world that has discarded him. Billy Gardell as Garbage Bot. Billy Gardell voices Garbage Bot. Gardell, born on August 20, 1969, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, is best known for his role as Mikey Biggs in Mike and Molly, CBS 2010 to 2016. His warm, working class vocal presence is a natural fit for a character literally defined by the detours of human civilization. The physical performance artists Terry Norte, Adam Crossdale, Devian Dalton, Martin Calba, and others. One of the most fascinating aspects of the Electric State production is the layer of performance artists who brought the film's robots to physical life, separate from the voice cast. This distinction is crucial. While stars like Harrelson, Tudyk, Mackie, and Slade provided the voices of the robot characters, a dedicated team of physical performers gave these characters their bodies, movement, and on set presence. Terry Norty, one of the world's leading experts in movement performance, known for his work in War for the Planet of Apes, Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame, served as a physical performer for multiple characters including Mr. Peanut, Popfly, Senator Drones, Ice Cream Bot, and Ski Bot. Notre's extraordinary ability to convey character through physicality alone means that even when Harrelson or Cox's voices are layered over his movement, there is a coherent physical logic beneath every gesture and stride. Adam Crossdale physically performed the Marshall, Tacobot, Sentrybot, and Blitz, among others. Chris Silvestri brought physical life to PC, Perplexo, Construction Bot, Clam, Lieutenant Leaks, and Garbage Can Bot. Divine Dalton was three primarily physical performer for Cosmo, while Phoenix Notary performed Young Cosmo. Gabrielle Median physically performed Penny Pal, Mrs. Caesar, Happy Billboard, and various central drones. Martin Calbaba, known for his role as Marty in Pirates of Caribbean franchise, physically performed both Herman and Milkman both. This layer of cast, often uncelebrated in mainstream coverage, is essential to understanding how the electric state achieved its visual coherence. The robots in this film are not purely CGI creation, but characters given life through a sophisticated blend of practical performance, motion capture, and digital enhancement. Joe Russo himself, co-director of the film, appears as Kiwi Board, a delightful cameo that continues the tradition of directors inserting themselves into their own work. The Assembly of Ensemble, a production history in casting. The story of how the Electric State cast came together is nearly as dramatic as the film itself. The project's journey from the announcement to screen spanned nearly 8 years, and the casting evolved significantly along the way. The earliest confirmed talent was Millie Bobby Brown, attached from the project's December 2022 reorganization under the Russos at Universal. When Netflix took over distribution rights in June 2022, Chris Pratt was quickly brought into talks and confirmed by August. That same month, the first major wave of supporting cast was announced. Michelle Yeoh, Stanley Tucci, Jensen Alexander, Brian Cox, and Jenny Slate. Cox and Slate were specifically noted to be voicing robot characters. In October 2022, Woody Norman joined the cast, bringing his accumulated common profile to the project. Then, in November 2022, a second major wave, Giancarlo Esposito, Ke Hui Kwan, Anthony Mackie, and Billy Bob Thornton, who was later not listed among the final credits cast, is widely calculated material, suggesting his role may have changed or been reduced in post production. Crucially, Michelle Yeoh, who had been confirmed in August 2022, had to withdraw from the project due to scheduling conflict. Her replacement by Ke Huy Kwan was announced alongside the November 2022 wave, and the poetic symmetry of Kwan stepping in for his Everything Everywhere All at Once co-star was no lost on industry observer. The October 2024 editions, Woody Harrelson, Alan Tudyk, Hank Azaria, and Coleman Domingo, came very late in the production timeline, confirmed after principal photography had wrapped in February 2023 and reshoot had concluded in April 2024. This suggests that some voice casting decisions were made during post production, potentially as the filmmaker refined the personalities and vocal identities of the Exclusion Zone's robot community. Principal photography began in October 2022 in Atlanta, Georgia, under the working title Stormwind. The production suffered a tragic interruption on November 4, 2022, when a crew member was killed in an offset car crash, a sobering reminder of the human cost that underlies even the most glamorous production. Filming eventually wrapped in early February 2023 with reshoots occurring from March 20 to April 5, 2024. The creative team behind the ensemble. The cast of The Electric State was assembled in service of creative vision articulated by two filmmakers who know ensemble storytelling intimately. Directors Anthony and Joy Russo built their reputation on large scale ensemble films through their work in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Captain America, The Winter Soldier, Captain America, Civil War, Avengers Infinity War, and Avengers Endgame. Their instinct for populating a film with recognizable faces who each bring distinct energy to screen is evident in the Electric State's casting decision. As Anthony Rossio noted, we gravitate to ensemble storytelling. Maybe it's because we come from a large, extended Italian American family. Screenwriters Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, who had previously collaborated with the Rossios on the Captain America film and both Avengers film, as well as Netflix's The Gray Man, wrote characters that were designed to accommodate the specific qualities of the performer's cast. The dynamic between Keats and Herman, for instance, draws explicitly on the established rapport between Pratt and Mackie from their MCU years. The decision to give Ke Huy Quan a dual role plays on his documented ability to project both intellectual vulnerability as a human and quiet mechanical devotion as a robot. Composer Alan Silvestri, whose association with the Russo brothers dates to Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, provided the film's score, marking his third collaboration with the director. Silvestri's music supports the ensemble by giving each character arc its own sonic signature while maintaining the retro-futuristic aesthetic of the film's alternate 1940s 94 setting. Critical reception and the cast's role in the conversation. The Electric State was released to overwhelmingly negative critical reviews. On Rotten Tomatoes, only 14% of 158 critics gave it a positive review, with an average rating of 3.7 out of 10. The site's consensus described the film as lumbering along like a giant automaton with plenty of hardware to back it up, but none of the spark that would make it come to life. Metacritic assigned it a score of 30 out of 100, generally unfavorable. Much of the critical discussion focused on the performances of Millie Bobby Brown and Chris Pratt. Some critics felt their work was flat or one dimensional, constrained by screenplay that prioritized the spectacle over character depth. Others questioned whether the film's $320 million budget, making it one of the most expensive films ever produced, was well spent given the final production reception. However, the critical conversation around the cast also included genuine appreciation. Ke Huy Kwan's dual performance was frequently cited as the film's most nonsense human element. The voice cast, particularly Harrelson, Mr. Peanut, was widely noted as bringing unexpected warmth and humor to robot community. The physical performance artists, while rarely discussed by name in mainstream reviews, contributed to the film's visual richness in ways that critics acknowledged even when laminating other aspects of the production. The Golden Raspberry Award, the Razzies, nominated The Electric State for Worst Picture, Worst Director, and Worst Screenplay, reflecting the severity of critical disappointment. Yet, the film's performance on Netflix was genuinely staggering. It debuted at number 1 on the platform English Film Chart with 25.2 million views in its first week, remained at the number 1 the following week with 22.5 million views, and according to Nielsen Media Research, accumulated 3.8 billion minutes of viewing time across the full year of 2025, ranking it 8th among films for general audience that year. In the first half of 2025 alone, it garnered 158.2 million hours of watch time across 74.2 million views. The gap between critical reception and audience viewership is one of the most striking features of Electric State's legacy, and the star power of its cast is largely responsible for that gap. Audiences came to the film because they wanted to see Millie Bobby Brown, Chris Pratt, Ke Huy Quan, and an extraordinary ensemble of voice performers bring this world to life. Whether or not, the film fulfilled its creative ambition. The casting succeeded in delivering a massive, globally engaged audience. The Electric State in context of its star's career. Viewed through the lens of each performer's filmography, the Electric State occupies a distinctive place. For Millie Bobby Brown, it represents her most significant attempt to establish herself as leading actress beyond the Stranger Things universe, an attempt that drew mixed responses but undeniably confirmed her box office appeal. For Chris Pratt, it is another data point in ongoing post-MCU career that has been commercially successful even when critically tepid. For Ke Huy Quan is the part of remarkable post-Oscar reascendance that has seen him welcomed back into Hollywood mainstream with extraordinary warmth. For the Vice cast, the Electric State offered an opportunity to explore a mode of performance that is simultaneously more constrained and more liberated than on screen acting. Woody Harrelson, Alan Tudyk, Jenny Slate, and Brian Cox, Hank Azaria, and Anthony Mackie and Coleman Domingo all brought decades of craft to the roles that required them to convey full characters through voice alone, and in most cases, they succeeded in making their robot characters among the film's most memorable presence. The physical performers Terry Notre, Adam Croasdell, Devin Dalton, Gabriel Median, Martin Kalbaba, and others remind us that cinema is always collaborative art. The faces and bodies we see on screen are often the product of multiple artists working in concert. Conclusion: The Human Architecture of a Mechanical World, The Electric State, 2025, is a film that contains multitudes, both in its ambition and in its execution. Its $320 million budget and star-studded cast represent one of the boldest bets in Netflix's history, and regardless of how critics responded, the film viewership numbers confirms that audiences around the world were hungry for exactly the kind of spectacle is offered. The casting of Electric State tells a story that parallels the film's own themes: a young woman navigating a world that has substituted technological convenience for genuine human connection. A group of discarded being robots in the film, veteran performers, and overlooked talents, returning legends in the real world who find community and purpose together in a space set apart from the mainstream society. A story about exploitation, about what we own to those gifts and labor we consume, and about the possibility of redemption. Millie Bobby Brown, Chris Pratt, Ke Huy Quan, Jason Alexander, Giancarlo Esposito, Stanley Tucci, Woody Norman, Maren Hinkel, Michael Turco, Holly Hunter, Patty Harrison, Anthony Mackie, Woody Harrelson, Jenny Slate, Alan Tudyk, Brian Cox, Hank Azaria, Coleman Domingo, Rob Gronkowski, Jordan Black, Billy Gardell, and the equally essential physical performers Terry Notre, Adam Crousdell, Divine Dalton, Chris Silvestri, Gabriel Median, Martin Kalbaba, and Phoenix Notary all contributed to building the world that, whatever its narrative shortcomings, was genuinely alive with human creativity, craft, and intention. In an era when the definition of what it means to be a star is shifting rapidly, and when the boundary between human and artificial intelligence is becoming one of the culture's most urgent anxieties. The Electric State assembled a cast that brought irreducibly human qualities, humor, grief, warmth, morale, complexity to a story about machines struggling to be recognized as sentient beings. The film's casting at its best is its own argument for the enduring value of human performance in an age of the electric state. The Electric State 2025 is currently streaming on Netflix. Runtime 128 minutes, rated PG-13, directed by Anthony Russo and Joy Russo. Screenplay by Christopher Marcus and Stephen McPhee, based on the illustrated novel by Simon Stalleheng. The Electric State 2025, a comprehensive look at production, release, and reception. Introduction. The Electric State is a 2025 American science fiction action adventure film directed by Anthony and Joy Russo, the acclaimed filmmaking duo popularly known as the Russo brothers, and produced under their production company AGBO Films in collaboration with Double Dream and Skybound Entertainment. Distributed exclusively by Netflix, the film is loosely based on the 2018 illustrated novel of the same name by Swedish artist and author Simon Stanleyhang, whose hauntingly evocative blend of retro-futurism and melancholic storytelling had captured the imagination of readers worldwide. The screenplay was penned by Christopher Marcus and Stephen McPhee, the celebrated writing duo who collaborated with the Russo brothers on the final two Avenger films in Marvel Cinematic Universe. The film boasts an extraordinary ensemble cast featuring Millie Bobby Brown in the lead role alongside Chris Pratt, Ke Huy Quan, Jason Alexander, Woody Harrelson, Anthony Mackie, Brian Cox, Jenny Slate, Giancarlo Esposito, and Stanley Tucci, with a reported production budget of $320 million. The Electric State stands as one of the most expensive films ever made, positioning itself as a landmark of expensive Netflix original content. Despite its staggering budget, a list talent, and a pedigree of the team behind it, the film met with overwhelmingly negative critical reviews upon its release, drawing comparison to other costly Netflix productions that failed to match financial outlay with the artistic quality. Yet, despite the critical drubbing, the film found a massive audience on streaming platforms, debuting at number 1 and accumulating extraordinary viewing figures during its first week of release. This video offers an exhaustive look at every dimension of the electric state, from its earliest origin in development through its pre-production phase, principal photography, post-production work, musical score, theatrical and streaming release, home media, situation, box office, and viewership performance, and the full sweep of critical opinion. Production, development, and pre production. The journey that eventually brought The Electric State to Netflix screen in March 2025 began nearly 8 years earlier, rooted in the creative vision of the Russo brothers and their admiration for a quality, stunning piece of illustrated fiction, acquiring the rights and early development 2017-2020. The story of the film's development begins in December 2017 when Anthony and Joy Rossio acquired the rights to Simon Stilhank's illustrated novel, The Electric State, which had been published that same year. Stilhank, a Swedish artist known for blending haunting dystopian landscape with mundane American, had produced a book that was unlike most science fiction works, sparse in traditional narrative, rich in mood and atmospheric imagery, and deeply melancholic in its emotional register. The story followed a nameless girl and her robot companion traveling a collapsed America, and its imagery vast open highways littered with defunct machines under grey skies felt like nothing else in popular fiction. Upon acquiring the rights, the Russo brothers positioned themselves as producers on the project. At that early stage, the directing chair was offered to Andy Muschietti, the Argentine filmmaker who had recently achieved massive commercial success with the horror adaptation It 2017. Muschietti was in negotiation to direct with Barbara Muschietti, his producing partner and sister, was attached as a producer. Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFly, the writers who had already collaborated with the Russo brothers on the Captain America trilogy and who would go on to pen Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, were set to write the screenplay from the outset. For the next 3 years, the project remained in a state of development, navigating the complexities of adapting a world so different from a conventional mainstream cinema. The graphic novel's elliptical narrative structure and deliberately subdued tone posed genuine challenges for writers attempting to translate it into a 2-hour theatrical experience. In December 2022, a major shift occurred. Universal Pictures won the distribution rights to the film in a competitive auction, signaling serious commercial interest in the project. With this new deal came pivotal creative changes. The Russo brothers stepped up from the producing role to take on directing duties themselves, while Andy Muschietti transitioned into the role of executive producer through his own production company. Millie Bobby Brown, already one of the most recognizable young talents in the world, thanks to her role as Eleven in Strange Things, was announced as the film's lead, with production set to begin as soon as possible. Both she and the Russo brothers completed their respective ongoing commitments. For Brown, that meant finishing season 4 of Stranger Things, and for Russo, it meant completing The Grey Man 2022 for Netflix. The move to Netflix and casting 2022. In June 2022, reports emerged that the distribution rights were set to transfer from Universal Pictures to Netflix, as Universal was reportedly no longer planning to give the film a traditional theatrical release. Later the same month, the transfer was confirmed. Netflix would be the film's exclusive distributor. This made The Electric State the second major collaboration between Netflix and HBO following The Grey Man 2022, which had a reported budget of approximately $200 million and starred Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans. The casting process proceeded rapidly in the months that followed. Chris Pratt, himself a veteran of Russo brothers' Avenger productions in his role as a Star-Lord, was soon announced to co-star alongside Brown. He was confirmed in August 2022, and alongside him came a wave of additional casting announcements. Mike, Michelle Yeoh, Stanley Tucci, Jason Alexander, Brian Cox, and Jenny Slate were all revealed as a cast members. Cox and Slate were specifically reported to be voicing robot characters. In October 2022, Woody Norman was added to the cast, and in November, Giancarlo Esposito was cast as the voice of menacing robotic drone named Marshall. Anthony Mackie and Billy Bob Thornton also joined the ensemble at around this time. One notable change in the cast involved Michelle Yeoh, who had to exit the project due to scheduling conflicts. She was replaced by Ke Huy Quan, who had been Yeoh's co-star in Everything Everywhere All at Once. 2022. Quan was cast in a dual role, playing both the human Dr. Clark Amherst and the robot character PC. As the production for the main unit drew closer, additional voice talent continued to be confirmed. In October 2024, it was reported that Woody Harrelson, Alan Tudyk, Hank Azaria, and Coleman Domingo had joined the cast as voice actors for various robot characters. Har- Harrelson would voice the memorable Mr. Peanut, a robot version of the famous planter mascot who leads the robots in the exclusion zone, while Tudyk voiced Cosmo, the central robot companion of the story. Azaria voiced Perplexo, a magician-themed robot, and Domingo voiced a drone operator named Wolfie. Source material departures and creative philosophy. From early on, the production team was candid about the fact that the film would not attempt a faithful, direct adaptation of Stellenhag's graphic novel. This becomes a point of contention with fans of the original work once it was publicly confirmed. At the film's panel, held in conjunction with the release of initial images and promotional material in late 2024, Anthony Russo explained the team's reasoning. He stated that he found the original material fascinating and compared the experience of adapting it to their work on the Marvel films. However, he acknowledged that the original book presented genuine storytelling challenges for a feature film, noting that the world depicted was not shown enough in the graphic novel to sustain a conventional 2-hour narrative without significant expansion. These challenges led the filmmakers to use Stanley Hack's artwork primarily as visual inspiration rather than as a narrative blueprint. They constructed an entirely new story that leaned into 1990s aesthetics and added a plot revolving around robotic animatronic developing artificial intelligence with the theme of machines campaigning for equal rights in a retro-futuristic society. The decision, while logical from a commercial filmmaking standpoint, would later become one of the most common points of attack from critics who felt the resulting film was too far removed from the source material's unique character. Filming Principal Photography October 2022 February 2023 Principal photography on the electric stage began in October 2022 in Atlanta, Georgia, with the production working under the working title Stormwind. Atlanta had been regular production hub for high-budget studios film over the previous decade, offering generous tax incentives and world-class studio infrastructure. Filming took place at various locations in and around the Atlanta metropolitan area, including Lake Acworth, Georgia, which served as one of the shooting locations. The shoot was not without incident. On November 4, 2022, production was temporarily halted following a tragedy. A crew member working on the film died in a car crash that occurred offset. The production paused as a mark of respect and in order to address the situation before resuming. Despite this somber interruption, filming continued and eventually concluded in early February 2023, approximately 4 months after it had begun. Production design and visual approach. One of the most significant creative decisions made during production was the use of on-set visual production (OSVP), employing large LED backdrop panel to generate realistic, real-time environments that could surround actors on stage. This technique, which had been popularized by the Mandalorian on Disney Plus, allowed the cast to react to and interact with the highly detailed digital environments without the need for green screen. It also enabled the production to achieve the film's unique retro-futuristic visual look, capturing vast dystopian American landscapes that blended the familiar decay of early 1990s with the eerie presence of abandoned machine technology. Production designer Dennis Gazner was hired to oversee the visual world of the film. Gazner is a veteran of visually distinctive world-building film, having served as a production designer on Blade Runner 2049, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?, Big Fish, Skyfall, and Waterworld, among others. His approach to the electric state involved carefully translating the distinctive color palette and texture of Stellenhag's artwork in the practical and digital environments of the film, while also making adjustments to serve the most action-oriented and commercially accessible story the filmmakers had constructed. Cinematography was handled by Stephen F. Windon, who worked closely with the Gassner and Russo brothers to establish the film's visual grammar. The visual language aimed to evoke a sense of world caught between eras. The recognizable aesthetics of 1990s undercut and distorted by the presence of advanced technology that had since been discarded or weaponized. Reshoots 2024 Following the completion of principal photography in February 2023, the film entered post-production. However, reshoots were later scheduled, taking place from March 20 to April 5, 2024. Such reshoots are commonplace in large budget productions, allowing filmmakers to address narrative issues identified during editing, capture additional footage needed for visual effects sequence, and refine the overall film. The reshoots on "The Electric State" were carried out approximately 14 months after the main photography concluded, suggesting a fairly substantial post-production process. Post-production editing. The film was edited by Jeffrey Ford, a longtime collaborator of Russo brothers who had edited both Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. Among the other credits, Ford's task was considerable. Given the complexity of the material, the film features a large ensemble cast, numerous computer generated robot characters, action set pieces, and the overarching challenge of making a coherent narrative out of a story substantially different from its source material. The final film ran at 128 minutes, a runtime consistent with the kind of sprawling effects heavy production the Russo brothers favored. Visual effects. The visual effects work on The Electric State was one of the most technically ambitious undertakings in the film's production, and it consumed a significant portion of the reported $320 million budget. The film's world, filled with dozens of uniquely designed robots, vast dystopian landscape, large-scale battle sequence, and virtual reality environment, demanded extraordinary work from multiple VFX studios working in tandem. The production VFX supervisor was Matthew Butler, with David Feinstein serving as production VFX producer. The primary VFX vendor was Digital Domain, led by VFX supervisor Joel Beharness. Digital Domain played a central role in shaping the film's visual identity, contributing over 850 visual effect shots and developing nearly 480 distinct assets, including 61 uniquely designed robot characters. The studio worked closely with Butler and Dennis Gassner to bring memorable robot characters to life, including Cosmo, Herman, Mr. Peanut, Colonel Marshall Bradbury, voiced by Giancarlo Esposito, blending 1990s industrial aesthetics with futuristic mechanical design. Industrial Light and Magic (ILM), the legendary visual effect company founded by George Lucas, was the second major vendor on the film, supervised by Russell Earl, with an animation work led by supervisor Kevin Martell and Adrian Millington. ILM handled much of the film's climatic battle sequence, which involved a large-scale confrontation between the robots of the exclusion zone and the Ethan State's army of industrialized drones. Additional VFX contributed came from Storm Studio, supervised by Aspen Nordell, One of Us, supervised by Lars Anderson, and Lola VFX, supervised by Edson Williams. 2D animation was handled by Titmouse, supervised by David Vanderbrod. In total, approximately 2,000 visual effects shot appears in the film. Specially prop robots were constructed by Weta Workshop, the re-owned New Zealand effect company founded by Peter Jackson. These practical robot builds allowed the actor to have physical objects to interact with on set, grounding the performances in tangible reality even when the digital effects would later replace or augment those props in post. One of the most technically demanding aspects of the post production process was realizing Cosmo, the robot at the emotional heart of the film. Cosmo's design, with its large, round head and slightly off proportioned form, posed significant challenges for VFX team. Matthew Butler was determined to give Cosmo believable physical mechanics. I fought tooth and nail to put in little piston rod, push pull, and the things that could justify the Cosmo could actually move. Butler said, if we design a particular ball joint or cylindrical actuator or pitch actuator, we made sure that the motion of these robots was restricted to what that could do. To achieve an innocent, childlike quality in Cosmos movement, Butler arranged an early motion capture test at Digital Domain with the help of animation director Piotr Karvas. Karvas's young daughter performed childlike movements on the mocap stage, which were then applied to a rough digital proxy of Cosmo rendered in Unreal Engine. The result successfully conveyed the innocent performance quality the filmmakers were seeking, and the technique informed the final character animation throughout the film. For Cosmo's eyes, an artistic departure was made from Stellenhag's original design. I wanted Cosmo's eyes to have some emotion, Butler explained, rather than be just a painted pupil as in the book. We made a smoked glass lens from the pupil that you can see behind it. There is a camera. This double change gave the robot character an additional dimension of expressiveness on screen. The film also employed on-set virtual production technology extensively during the shoot, but the digital environment still required enormous post-production work to finalize. The LED volume stages provide a real-time backdrop, but many of the detailed environment, including the exclusion zones, ruined cityscapes, and the vast highways of the dystopian American West, required the extensive digital enhancement and extension during post. The final battle sequence, involving large number of robots, combatants, and sentry drone army, was almost entirely computer generated with only limited live action element. Primarily, Chris Pratt's interaction with the landscape retained in the final composite. Music. The score. Alan Silvestri. The musical score for the Electric State was composed by Alan Silvestri, one of the Hollywood's most celebrated and prolific composers. Silvestri's engagement with the project marked his third collaboration with Russo brothers, following his iconic score for Avengers: Infinity War 2018 and Avengers Endgame 2019. While the Russo brothers and Silvestri had clearly established a productive, creative rapport through their Avengers work, Silvestri is perhaps the most broadly known for his decades-long creative partnership with director Robert Zemeckis. Their collaboration produced some of the most memorable and beloved film scores in cinema history, including Back to the Future 1985, Forrest Gump 1994, and The Polar Express 2004, the latter of which earned Silvestri an Academy Award nomination for Best Original Song for the track Believe. For "The Electric State", Silvestri was tasked with composing music that served a very different emotional and tonal register from his Avengers work. The film's retro-futuristic setting, combined with its theme of technological alienation, corporate exploitation, and the emotional bond between siblings, called for a score that could be simultaneously nostalgic and unsettling, warmly orchestral and mechanically textured. Silvestri delivered a score that worked within these parameters, using the orchestral vocabulary he had refined over decades while incorporating tonal and textural elements appropriate to the film's alternate 1990s world. The official soundtrack album, released under the title The Electric State soundtrack from the Netflix film, was released digitally on March 7, 2025, 1 week before the film's Netflix premiere. Under Netflix Music LLC, the album comprises 25 tracks with a total running time of approximately 1 hour and 18 minutes, and it was made available for streaming on both Spotify and Apple Music. Among the most notable original tracks included on the album are "We Are Always Connected", which plays in the film's opening scene as Christopher writes a test, "Do you feel the air on your face?", which accompanies Michelle's journey to school and her traumatic memories of her family, and "Kid Cosmo Movie Night", which underscores one of the film's most emotionally resonant sequences, a moment in which Cosmo projects the Kid Cosmo cartoon on a wall, reminding Michelle of times spent with her brother. Music supervision for the film was handled by Tom Wolfe, whose credits include the cult classic Donnie Darko 2001. Wolfe selected an array of period appropriate needle drop from the 1980s and 1990s to complement Silvestri's original score, giving the film an authentic sonic texture consistent with its alternate 1990s setting. These songs include "Mary Jane's Last Dance" by Tom Petty and "The Heartbreakers", which plays just after the film's title appears, "Good Vibrations" by Lolita Holloway and Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch, which plays during a tense sequence in an abandoned circus surrounded by hostile robots, and tracks by The Clash, Judas Priest, and the Flaming Lips, among others. Theatrical release. The theatrical release strategy for The Electric State reflected the evolving distribution model of the streaming era. While the film was produced and distributed exclusively for Netflix, a very limited theatrical engagement was arranged prior to its streaming premiere. The film held its world premiere on February 24, 2025, at the historic Grauman's Egyptian Theater in Los Angeles, California, one of the Hollywood's most iconic venues and a regular host for major film premieres and special screenings. The premiere was attended by the cast and crew and generated considerable media attention, even as early reviews began to hint at the critical reception that would follow. A limited theatrical run in select cinemas began on March 7, 2025, 1 week ahead of the Netflix premiere. This limited run allowed the film to be experienced on the big screen for those seeking that experience, though the vast majority of audience were always intended to encounter the film through streaming. The theatrical run was brief and by design by served more as promotional event than a genuine wide release strategy. Home media. As a Netflix original production, The Electric State followed the standard Netflix distribution model. Its home media was effectively the Netflix program or platform itself, where the film became available globally on March 14, 2025. Netflix does not typically release its original film on physical home media formats such as Blu-ray or DVD. Unlike traditional studio release, the platform has occasionally partnered with companies like the Criterion Collection to release prestige titles in physical format. Films such as Martin Scorsese, The Irishman, Marriage Story, The Power of Dog, and The Roma have received such releases. But this treatment is generally reserved for critically acclaimed or award winning films. Given the overwhelmingly negative critical reception of The Electric State, a physical home media release is the style of the Criterion or similar prestige edition was widely regarded as highly unlikely. No official Blu-ray or DVD release was announced by Netflix for the film. The third-party DVD wholesaler listed product entries for the film, but no official licensed release from Netflix was confirmed. For all practical purposes, Netflix remained the sole authorized platform for viewing The Electric State outside of its brief theatrical engagement. Alongside the film's release, Netflix Games released a companion mobile video game titled The Electric State: Kid Cosmo on iOS and Android on March 18, 2025, just 4 days after the film's Netflix premiere. The game was developed in collaboration with HBO, the Russo brothers' production company, and the game developer Buck Game. Set in the world of film, the game follows Michelle and Christopher during their shared childhood as they navigate a mobile adventure featuring the Cosmo character. The game releases as a part of Netflix Game Services reflected the platform's broader strategy of expanding its entertainment offering beyond the film and television into interactive media. Reception. Box office. Because The Electric State was produced as a Netflix original and not given a wide theatrical release, it did not compete in the traditional box office marketplace. Its performance is instead measured by streaming viewership data, and that metric, the film was an ambiguous commercial success for the platform regardless of its critical reception. The Electric State debuted at number 1 on Netflix's English film viewership chart for the week of March 16, 2025, its opening week on the platform. During that first week, it accumulated 25.2 million views, a remarkable figure representing the numbers of accounts that watched at least some of the film. The following week, March 17 to 23, the film held its position at number 1 on the English film chart with 22.5 million views. Even in its third week, March 24 to 30, the film remained in the top tier of Netflix viewership, placing at number 2 on the English film chart with 7.6 million views. In cumulative streaming data from the first half of 2025 was equally impressive according to the Netflix's own figures. The Electric State granted 158.2 million hours of watch time across 74.2 million views in the first half of 2025, placing seventh among all the films on the Netflix platform during that period. This represented a genuinely enormous audience, one of the largest ever assembled for a streaming original in its initial release window. Niles Nielsen Media Research, which independently tracks streaming viewership on US television screen, also reported significant figures for the film. Between January and June 2025, The Electric State was streamed for 3.254 billion minutes, ranking seventh among all the films on streaming platforms during that period. For the full year of 2025, Nielsen Media recorded 3.8 billion minutes of watch time for the film, placing it eighth among the top movies for the general audience of 2025. A remarkable achievement from a film that opened to deeply negative critical notice. These numbers demonstrated a consistent pattern observable across the other high budget Netflix productions. Whatever critics said, Audience showed up in enormous numbers for expensive star-driven genre film. The film joined a tradition of Netflix titles, including The Gray Man, Red Notice, and Extraction, that generated massive viewership despite middling or poor critical reception. The implication was clear: for Netflix, the true measure of success was measured not in box office grosses or critical rating, but in the volume of subscriber engagement a film could drive, and the Electric State delivered that engagement in spades. Critical response. The critical reception of The Electric State was among the most negative of any major production in 2025. Critics, for the most part, were united in their disappointment both with the film's handling of its source material and with its overall quality as a piece of cinema. On the reviews aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, The Electric State holds an approval rating of just 14% based on 158 critics' reviews with an average rating of 3.7 out of 10. The site's critical consensus read, lumbering along like a giant automaton. The Electric State has plenty of hardware to come back it up, but none of the spark that would make it come to life. On Metacritic, which uses a weighted average of critical score, the film received a score of 30 out of 100 based on 37 critics, indicating generally unfavorable reviews. Criticism on the adaptation. Perhaps the most frequently voiced criticism concerned the film's loose, critics would say irresponsible, treatment of its source material. Stanley Hack's graphic novel is a spare, melancholic, and deeply personal work, and many critics felt that the film had discarded the precisely those qualities that made the original worth adapting. In review published in the New York Times, critic Elizabeth Wincentrell offered a pointed comparison between the source and its adaptation. She described the novel as elliptical in narrative, muted in color palette, and melancholy in mood, while characterizing the film as obvious, garish, and just plain dumb. This contrast neatly encapsulated what many critics felt was the core failure of the project, that in attempting to make commercially accessible blockbuster, the filmmakers had stripped away everything distinctive about the material they ostensibly wanted to adopt. Courtney Howard of Variety echoed these sentiments, criticizing the film's abandonment of the novel's thematic richness in favor of a generic conceit centered on freedom. Preachy commentary on prejudice and reductive wrote conflict between humankind and robots. Howard's critique point to a broader issue that the film narrative, in departing so radically from the source, had not replaced the original depth with anything of comparable substance, instead defaulting to a familiar genre trope. K. A. Dowd of IGN gave the film a 4 out of 10, writing that the director has bastardized a deeply lonely science fiction genre into another expensive group hug and team building comedy routine, a characteristically blunt summation that captured the sense that the film had traded genuine feeling for crowd pleasing spectacle. Dowd's remark connected the film's explicitity to the Russo brothers' Marvel work, suggesting that their approach to blockbuster filmmaking, built around ensemble casts, quippy dialogues, and escalating action set pieces, was fundamentally ill-suited to the introspective, solemnity tone of Stellan novel. Criticism of the late performance. In addition to the broader issue with the script and adaptation, critics frequently signaled out the lead performances for criticism. Both Millie Bobby Brown and Chris Pratt received notably poor notices for their work in film, with reviewers suggesting that neither actor had been given or had found the material to distinguish themselves. Kevin Maher of the Sunday Times awarded the film just 1 star out of 5, using his review as an occasion to question Brown's capacity for big screen performance. More broadly, he suggested that her cinematic outings had consistently revealed her to be profoundly ill equipped for film work, a characterization that provoked considerable debate. C. M. Ramsberg of Comic Book Resource reached a similarly unflattering conclusion, writing that despite the presence of Pratt and Brown, their performances remain flat and one-dimensional as they portray characters without depth or substance. Ramsberg gave the film a 3 out of 10. Alex Harrison of Screen Rant observed that the most notable thing about the film's lead performances was their apparent reliance on iconography from previous roles. Brown's appearance echoed her Eleven character from Stranger Things, while Pratt's look and energy echoed his Star-Lord from Guardians of the Galaxy film. This observation, that had stars were essentially reprising their most famous roles rather than creating new characters, struck many as damning indictment of both the casting choice and the screenplay. Criticism of the budget and the Russo brothers, where critics focused specifically on the staggering $320 million production budget and what they perceived as its misallocation. Sam Adams of Slate described the film as joining the list of coolest film of all the time, the list of costliest films of all the time, while delivering a result he characterized as disastrous. Johnny Oleksinski of the New York Post was most broadly critical of the Russo brothers' directorial output since Avengers Endgame, characterizing their post-Marvel work as some of the worst and priciest movies of the past 6 years, and panning the film's lack of originality. Judd Rasick of the Detroit Metro Times offered a slightly more nuanced view, praising the film's visual effects work while condemning the screenplay. Rasick called the final product a garish, unfunny Netflix original dumpster fire, a phrase that summed up a common critical position. The film's production design and visual ambition were not without merits, but those qualities were entirely undermined by a script that failed to provide anything emotionally resonant or thematically coherent to anchor them. Walter Shaw, or Film Freak Central, was among the most savage reviewers, awarding the film 0 stars out of 4. Shaw described the film as one of those movies where every other line is punctured by exhausted wisecrack from the passerby, a member of the faceless chorus or the sassy, black-coded sidekick, calling it a loud mess and framing it as symptomatic of broader cultural trend. Awards and nominations. The critical consensus had predictable consequences for the film's award season prospects. Rather than finding itself in contention for industry honors, the Electric State was instead nominated for the Golden Raspberry Award, the annual Razzie Award that recognizes the worst achievement in the film in several categories. The film received nominations for Worst Picture, Worst Director, The Russo Brothers, and the Worst Screenplay, Christopher Marcus and Stephen McLean, at the Golden Raspberry Award ceremony held on March 14, 2026. On a more positive note, the reflecting the film's genuine popularity with younger audiences, Chris Pratt received a Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Award nomination for Favorite Movie Actor, while Millie Bobby Brown received a nomination for Favorite Movie Actresses at the June 2025 ceremony. Points of praise. It is worth noting that not all critical commentary was entirely negative. Even among the film's harshest critics, a number of specific elements received genuine acknowledgement. The film's visual effect work, as noted by reviewers including Jared Rasick, was generally recognized as technically impressive, particularly given the complexity and novelty of many of the robot designs. The retro-futuristic production design, while not universally celebrated, was seen by some as the most faithful and successful translation of Stellenhag's aesthetic into cinematic form. Several critics noted that the film's use of 1990s needle drop and its commitment to a particular visual era gave it a distinctive surface texture, even if the texture was seen as deployed in the service of an otherwise hollow narrative. The voice cast for the robot characters are also attracted individual positive notes. Woody Harrelson, Mr. Peanut, was cited by some as providing genuine personality and warmth and aligned to Dick's performance as Cosmo was recognized as achieving the childlike innocence that the filmmaker had sought from the motion capture progress. These qualities, however, were consistently judged insufficient to compensate for the film's most fundamental flaws. Conclusion: The Electric State 2025 represents a fascinating and troubling case study in the economics and aesthetics of modern streaming cinema. Its production history, spanning years of development, a change in studios' enormous cast assembled over the course of multiple years, a month long principal photography shoot, extensive reshoot, and extraordinary complex post-production process involving thousands of visual effect shots is a testament to the kind of logistical and financial muscle that only the most well-resourced production in Hollywood can bring to bear. The result, however, was widely judged to be a misfire or proportion commensurate with its budget. Critics found a film that had abandoned the melancholy introspective qualities of its source material in exchange for a loud, generic blockbuster narrative dressed in an expensive visual effect. The performance of its stars were found wanting, its screenplay was dried for its lack of originality, and its creative decisions were seen by many as symptomatic of the Russo brothers' broader difficulties in finding a distinctive voice outside of the Marvel framework that had made them thousands name the household names. And yet, the paradox at the center of the electric state's story is that by the metrics that matter most to the Netflix viewership, engagement, the sheer volume of subscriber hours consumed the film was considerable success. Its debut at number 1 on Netflix's English film chart, its retention of that position into a second week, and its accumulation of 74.2 million views and 158.2 million hours of watch time in the first half of 2025 alone tell a story of popular engagement that no number of negative reviews can entirely diminish. Audiences, whatever critics said, found the film and watched it in a remarkable numbers. The divergence between critical consensus and popular consumption, amplified by the Netflix model of exclusive streaming distribution, may be one of the defining dynamics of contemporary cinema. The Electric State did not need box office return to justify its existence. It needed viewing figures, and those it delivered. Whether the film will be remembered as an expensive folly or a successful, if artistically compromised, piece of a popular entertainment will depend largely on how the culture ultimately weighs these competing measures of cinematic value. What cannot be disputed in the scale of the ambition and the budget that went into every frame. The Electric State is a $320 million film made with some of the most sophisticated filmmaking technology available in 2025, employing hundreds of visual effect artists, a world class composer, a cast of extraordinary talent, and a production design team of rare distinction. That all of these resources and talent could produce something so roundly dismissed by critics is perhaps the film's most electric and most disparate achievement. All information sourced from publicly available records including Wikipedia, Rotten Tomatoes, Metacritic's Netflix viewership report, Nielsen media research data, and production VFX industry publication. Review 1. Netflix has released the final exciting trailer for Joy and Anthony Russo's great looking science fiction film the Electric State. The film tells a story of a young girl bonding with a robot as she embarks on a dangerous adventure to find her brother. The film has a great cast that includes Millie Bobby Brown, Stranger Things, Chris Pratt, Guardian of the Galaxy, and Ke Huy Quan, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. The film adaptation is based the film is based on an adaptation of the illustrated novel by Simon Stahlenhag and is set in an alternate retro-futuristic version of 1997. The movie is set in a retro-futuristic past and the story follows Michelle, an orphanage teenager who traverses an American West in search of her younger brother. Joining her on the journey is a sweet but mysterious robot and an eccentric drifter. The story is also set in a world where humans are isolated in their VR helmets and continuing battle against a strange breed of monstrous drones in the wake of technological meltdown. Kwan also plays Dr. Amherst, a key figure in helping Michelle locate her brother, with Pratt playing Keats, a war veteran turned long haul trucker. The Russo tree teamed with writer Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely on the project, who also worked on Avengers Infinity War and Endgame. The cast also include Stanley Tucci as Tech Gru, Ethan Skate, Woody Norman as Michelle's brother, Martin Calbaba, the Giancarlo Esposito, a robot bounty hunter, Colonel Bradbury with Jason Alexander, Brian Cox, Jenny Slate, Anthony Mackie, Billy Bob Thornton, Alan Tudyk, and Woody Harrelson, lending their voice to various robots. Harrelson provides the voice of a giant robot version of the beloved American mascot Mr. Peanut. Review 2. Simon Stahlenhag's 2018 illustrated novel The Electric State won widespread acclaim and felt like the perfect blueprint for a big budget Spielbergian movie. The film rights had already been acquired by directors Anthony and Joy Russo a year before its publication, and after completing their double whammy of Avengers Infinity War 2018 and Avengers Endgame 2019, it slowly made its way to screen. Only note the big one. The Electric State may be a huge movie in terms of its budget, a gargantuan $320 million. But it's another of those Netflix's original films that comes and goes over a weekend. In an alternate 1990s, after a time when theme park style robots gained sentience and started a war against humanity. The Electric State focuses on teenager Michelle Millie Bobby Brown, who was orphaned after a car accident claimed the lives of her parents and super genius brother, Christopher Woody Norman. But when a globe headed boat claiming to be her dead sibling arrives on her doorstep years later, Michelle is pulled onto an adventure across dystopian America where she meets former soldier Kate Chris Pratt and discovered the truth of what happened to Christopher is tied to nefarious businessman Ethan Skate, Stanley Tucci, whose inventions allow people to transfer their consciousness into mechanical soldiers, ending the robot uprising. It sounds like a juicy concept, and Stallenhag's original artwork painted a vivid picture of how cool a feature length movie version of this idea could look. Still, the electric state is ultimately an empty spectacle. It soon becomes apparent that the characters and the storyline are not interesting or especially original. We have seen countless variations of the robot uprising story, most recently 2023, The Creator. And the only notable difference in Electric State is the aesthetic and personalities of the warmongering machines being so incourageous. They are all anthropomorphic, animatronic, like Five Nights at Freddy's robotic sport mascot or retro fairground attractions, often with unnerving painted green and enormous anime style eyes. Written to be a quippy adventure by screenwriters Christopher Marcus and Simon McFly, The Electric State is surprisingly devoid of humor that lands. Chris Pratt is adept at playing snarky roles, most notably as Peter Star-Lord Quill in the Guardian of Galaxy trilogy, but his turn as Keats is oddly lifeless. It does not help that he has no chemistry with Millie Bobby Brown, perhaps down to the fact their dynamic is a pseudo father daughter one, and Pratt seems to work best with actors from his own generation or romantic co stars. Whatever the reason, both gives it their best shot, but the film never comes alive based on what you are seeing its flesh and blood actors do together. Another review says, starring Millie Bobby Brown, Chris Pratt, Ke Huy Quan, Jason Alexander, Giancarlo Esposito, Stanley Tucci, Woody Norman, Anthony Mackie, Woody Harrelson, Brian Cox, Jenny Slate, and Alain Tudyk. Synopsis: set in the aftermath of a robot uprising in an alternate variant of the 90s, The Electric State follows an orphaned teenager whose venture across the American West with a cartoon inspired robot, a smuggler, and his sidekick in search of her younger brother. The components of Netflix's largest attempt at making a bona fide small screen blockbuster were all in place on the box marked The Electric State. The directors behind Marvel Studio' finest hour or three with their writing team and Star Lord in tow, and the source novel by Swedish artist Simon Stanley that's full of striking imagery depicting the aftermath of Roboplukes. So it's something of a shame to report that while this is glossy, gorgeous fare with a toy box worth of creativity and a killer soundtrack, it's nothing more than a solid 3-star movie that will vanish from your own database the minute Yoshimi Battle the pink robot plays over the end credits. The first thing Anthony and Joy Rossio decided to do is abandon the melancholic beauty of the source novel and, with Stellan Hack's blessing, make something geared towards the younger audience. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Just do not go in expecting this to be a dystopian hellscape like The Last of Us. Brace yourself for Billy the Bass gags, Chris Pratt giving a Peter Quill-like performance, and much smaller movie than the Robot War synopsis might suggest. Yes, we journey through battlefields littered with decapitated robots carrying the landscape, their twisted wreckage hinting at a darker lore upon which the most colorful story plays out. But the driving force of Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFly's scripts is not Transformers style battle. It's the relationship between Millie Bobby Brown, orphaned teenager, and her missing brother. It's a through line that set up with so much exposition dumped into the film's opening 20 minutes that it threatens to short circuit audiences' interest. But these are the guys who managed to stitch Marvel's biggest and best phases together. So they just about to pull off the tricky juggling act of dropping you into the world and establishing the drama which has positioned Brown as a protagonist before she embarked on the film's main narrative arc. It's achieved using flashbacks, a wonderful world building cartoon called Kid Cosmo, and the same kind of performance from Stranger Things star that makes her the most consistently great thing about the show. make it through the heavy coding of the first act and the electric splutter into life once Chris Pratt, solo alike smuggler, enters preceding. Sure, he is on autopilot, and much like the movie as whole, he is just an amalgamation of other films' role, but the goofy hero charm still works for now. His arrival is also important because he brings with him a robotic sidekick named Herman, voiced by Anthony Mackie, who, amongst a conveyor belt of weird, wonderful, and sad robot creation, is undoubtedly the film's MVP on which if you do not buy into the mechanics of the human story, then the VFX on display with the likes of self-explanatory Mr. Peanut, Woody Harrelson, postal carrier android Penny Pal, Jenny Slate, and dilapidated baseball pitching Popfly, Brian Cox, coupled with their terrific voice performances, make for diverting entertainment until the next decent song choice pops up on the soundtrack. Where this really needed a reboot was the bad guy department. Stanley Tucci, techno villain, feels lifted from something like Ready Player One, a film with which the shares quite a few tonal similarities with Giancarlo Esposito's virtual reality boundary. Hunter is about as threatening as those Roger droids from the Phantom Menace. Ultimately, the electric state is a little like one of the beautifully designed robots at the heart of story, clunky at times, assembled from recognizable parts, which occasionally sparks into life and ultimately just about hangs together as fun slice of disposable popcorn entertainment. Review 4. In the grand tradition of Hollywood throwing mountains of cash at science fiction epics, the electric state arrives with a budget so colossal it could fund a small nation, or at least a few more seasons of Stranger Things. Directed by the dynamic duo of Anthony and Joy Rossio, the film is based loosely because of course it is on Simon Stålenhag's hauntingly beautiful 2018 illustrated novel of the same name. It has a cast packed with well regarded names. But does the star power mean the movie works? Let's dive into everything we know about the electric state, including its plot, ending, cast, trailer, and a brief movie review. We mentioned Stranger Things above because the film stars Millie Bobby Brown as the lead. If you are waiting eagerly for the fifth and final soap season, this might serve as an amuse bouche if you are a fan. But sadly, this science fiction adventure is more of a microwave leftover situation than a government prelude. But more on that later in the review. It was a waste, particularly because it comes from the same writer, director, team that brought us Avengers Infinity War 2018 and Avengers Endgame 2019, who actually pretty great and top two highest grossing Marvel movies. Let's probe deeper into the plot and that surprisingly poignant and the heart-rending ending of the electric state, and also how the movie has echoes of Alia Bhatt's Jigra, which was better and made on a fraction of the budget here. What happened in the plot and ending of The Electric State? The electric state is set in an alternate version of our world where robots were invented to serve humans by doing manual jobs for them, but they were treated like, well, machines. As a result, after decades of suffering, there was a robot revolution to wipe out humanity, or at least that's the version of the story we are given at the start. Then, a visionary billionaire named Ethan Stanley Tucci, invented a device that can enable humans to hunt these robotic combat machines. So, yes, his plan is to help humanity fight fire with fire. Most of the robots were neutralized after the survivor of were herded into a homogeneous exclusion zone for eternity. But this is not really Skate or the human robot war story. This is instead a story of an ordinary teenage girl called Michelle Bobby Brown and her younger, super smart brother Christopher Woody Norman. What is Michelle and Christopher's deal? The thing is, Skate could invent the robot killing machines because he had the immense brain power of Christopher to harness. I do not know how that works any more than you do, but he utilized a comatose Christopher's mind to run his network and become one of the most influential people on the planet. Michelle and Christopher and their parents had met with a car accident, and an injured, bedridden Michelle was told in the hospital that her whole family perished. Through barely and scared got him smuggled to his lab to use his mind to invent the machines. Our story begins in the present. Surviving robots that are not in the exclusion zone are eliminated on sight, and anybody harboring one is deemed an enemy of the state. Yeah, the metaphor are not stubble with this one. Oh, and the humans are so captivated by the virtual reality devices called neurocasters that the real life does not interest them at all. Michelle lives with a rather stupid foster father, played by Jason Alexander of Seinfeld, who also preferred the visual kind of reality. She is approached by a Cosmo robot, which is from a Saturday morning cartoon show that Michelle and Christopher loved and bonded over as a kid, while younger kids. Initially, she is horrified, but the robot convinces her using the character's catchphrases that he is Christopher's or at least a part of his consciousness. It also communicates to her that they need to find the man who smuggled him out of the hospital. Dr. Amherst, played by Ki Hui Kwan, was Kate. Supposedly, he is located in the exclusion zone. An escape and a new friend. Michelle escapes with Cosmo and her foster father's car, though it breaks down no long after. They find a man called Keats, Chris Pratt, who not only secretly and illegally owns a robot called Herman Martin Calbaba, but sometimes steals goods from exclusion zone to sell to people. He is shocked to find the two loitering in his place, but before he can deal with them, they are interrupted by Colonel Marshall Bradbury, Giancarlo Esposito, the last seen in Captain America Brave New World, aka the Butcher of Sanctuary. The man was bestowed with the Sworquet because of his success while hunting robots in war. He is a simple man. He is aware of Cosmo and he wants it dead. A fight ensues and Michelle Keats, Cosmo and Herman escape and end up in exclusion zone. However, their path out is blocked.